Sierra Leone, a small nation on the coast of West Africa, boasts a rich and complex history. Known for its stunning natural harbour and lush mountainous terrain, Sierra Leone has witnessed centuries of change and upheaval, from ancient kingdoms to colonial rule, from civil war to a fragile peace. The story of Sierra Leone is one of resilience in the face of adversity. Sierra Leone's strategic location on the Atlantic Ocean made it a crossroads for trade and cultural exchange for centuries. Long before the arrival of Europeans, indigenous groups thrived in the region, establishing complex societies and engaging in trade networks that spanned across West Africa. However, the arrival of European powers in the 15th century would drastically alter the course of Sierra Leone's history, ushering in an era of exploitation and the transatlantic slave trade. Centuries before the arrival of Europeans, Sierra Leone was home to diverse indigenous groups, including the Mende, Temne, and Limba peoples. These communities developed sophisticated social structures, engaged in agriculture and trade, and held strong spiritual beliefs that continue to shape Sierra Leonean culture today. The dense forests and fertile lands of Sierra Leone provided sustenance and resources, allowing these early inhabitants to flourish. Among these groups, powerful kingdoms arose, fostering trade and regional influence. The kingdoms of Koya, Bulam, and Sherbro emerged as prominent forces in the region, engaging in trade with neighboring empires and developing intricate political systems. These kingdoms were not static entities, but dynamic forces that interacted, competed, and forged alliances, shaping the political landscape of pre-colonial Sierra Leone. The arrival of Portuguese traders in the 15th century marked the beginning of European involvement in the region, a development that would have profound and lasting consequences for Sierra Leone's future. The arrival of Europeans in the 15th century marked a turning point in Sierra Leone's history. Initially, interactions centered around trade, with Portuguese explorers seeking gold, ivory, and other valuable commodities. However, the burgeoning transatlantic slave trade would soon overshadow all other aspects of European engagement, casting a long shadow over Sierra Leone. European powers, including the Portuguese, British, and Dutch, established trading posts along the coast of Sierra Leone, transforming the region into a major hub for the transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans, including many from Sierra Leone, were forcibly transported across the Atlantic in horrific conditions, victims of a brutal system that treated human beings as commodities. The impact of the slave trade on Sierra Leone was devastating. Families were torn apart, communities were shattered, and the social fabric of Sierra Leonean society was deeply scarred by the horrors of forced migration and enslavement. The legacy of this dark chapter would continue to resonate long after the abolition of slavery. As the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade became increasingly indefensible, abolitionist movements gained momentum in Europe and North America. In 1787, British abolitionists, driven by a vision of a haven for freed slaves, founded Freetown on the Sierra Leone Peninsula. This settlement offered refuge to former slaves from Britain, Nova Scotia, and the Caribbean, seeking to build new lives in freedom. Freetown quickly became a beacon of hope for Africans seeking liberation from slavery. The city's diverse population, comprised of returnees from the diaspora and indigenous Sierra Leoneans, created a unique cultural blend that continues to define Sierra Leone today. However, the road to freedom was not without its challenges. The freed slaves faced hostility from some local communities who resented their presence and the British influence they represented. Moreover, the legacy of the slave trade cast a long shadow, leaving behind economic and social disparities that would take generations to address. Section 5. British colonial rule, a century and a half of control. The establishment of Freetown marked the beginning of British colonial rule in Sierra Leone, which would last for over 150 years. Initially, British influence was limited to the coastal areas, with Freetown serving as the administrative centre of the colony. However, over time, British control expanded inland, encompassing the entire territory of present-day Sierra Leone by the early 20th century. British colonial rule brought about significant changes to Sierra Leone. The British introduced Western education, legal systems, and infrastructure projects, aiming to modernize the colony and integrate it into the British Empire. However, colonial rule was also characterized by exploitation, racial segregation, and the suppression of indigenous cultures. The British imposed taxes, controlled trade, and exploited Sierra Leone's natural resources for the benefit of the empire, leaving a legacy of economic dependence and underdevelopment. Section 6. The Road to Independence. The Struggle for Self-Governance. Following World War II, the tide of colonialism began to recede across Africa, as demands for self-determination grew stronger. Sierra Leone was no exception. Nationalist movements emerged, advocating for an end to British rule and the establishment of an independent Sierra Leonean state. Sierra Leonean leaders, many of whom had been educated in British institutions, engaged in negotiations with the colonial authorities, seeking a peaceful transition to independence. On April 27, 1961, after decades of struggle, Sierra Leone achieved its independence, becoming a constitutional monarchy within the Commonwealth of Nations. Sir Milton Margai, leader of the Sierra Leone People's Party, became the country's first Prime Minister, ushering in an era of hope and optimism for the newly independent nation. Section 7. Sierra Leone's Civil War, a decade of conflict and brutality. Despite the initial optimism that accompanied independence, Sierra Leone's post-colonial history was marked by political instability, economic stagnation, and social unrest. Years of corruption, mismanagement, and ethnic tensions created a volatile environment that ultimately erupted into a brutal civil war in 1991. The Revolutionary United Front, led by Foday Sanko, launched a rebellion against the government, aiming to overthrow the government and seize control of the country's diamond mines. The RUF's tactics were characterized by extreme brutality, including widespread killings, amputations, and the use of child soldiers. The civil war raged for over a decade, displacing millions of people, destroying infrastructure, and leaving deep scars on Sierra Leonean society. Section 8. Post-conflict recovery, rebuilding a nation. After 11 years of brutal conflict, a peace agreement was signed in 2002, officially ending Sierra Leone's civil war. The process of rebuilding a shattered nation began with the international community providing aid and support for disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs for former combatants. The road to recovery was long and arduous. Sierra Leone faced the daunting task of rebuilding infrastructure, restoring trust in institutions, and healing the wounds of war. The government, with the support of international partners, implemented programs focused on economic development, healthcare, and education, aiming to create a more stable and prosperous future for all Sierra Leoneans. The establishment of the Special Court for Sierra Leone, a UN-backed tribunal, brought perpetrators of war crimes to justice, offering a measure of accountability for the atrocities committed during the conflict. Section 9. Sierra Leone today, challenges and opportunities. Sierra Leone today is a country in transition, striving to overcome the legacy of conflict and build a brighter future. While significant progress has been made in terms of peace-building and development, substantial challenges remain. Poverty, unemployment, and inequality persist, hindering economic growth and fueling social tensions. Despite these challenges, Sierra Leone possesses immense potential. The country is endowed with abundant natural resources, including diamonds, rutile, and fertile agricultural land. Its youthful population, if provided with education and opportunities, can become a driving force for innovation and economic growth. The international community continues to play a vital role in supporting Sierra Leone's development, providing aid, investment, and technical expertise. Ultimately, the future of Sierra Leone lies in the hands of its people. By embracing good governance, promoting national unity, and harnessing the country's vast potential, Sierra Leone can overcome the shadows of the past and build a more peaceful and prosperous future for all.